Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Worthit podcast. Hello there, Alex. How you doing?
Hello. Good, doing good.
Yeah, excellent. Good stuff. So we're back at it again. Episode number, I think, 21, but my maths is always rubbish and I always get the episodes wrong. Do you know what I did the other day? I was looking at through our YouTube playlist and I was trying to update it to see if I could put all of the podcasts in order. And I ended up seeing that we've somehow skipped over, I think, 2 episodes, so 2 numbers in particular. It's either that the episodes are missing or that we've just completely missed out on 2 numbers. I think it's episode number 13 and episode number... Is it episode number 7? Or something like that? Something quite low and a bit strange. I don't know how I did it.
God, that's weird.
But here we are. Because I thought the other day, I was looking in the playlist in general, and it only had 8 episodes in the whole podcast playlist. I was like, that can't be right, surely. So I first then found out that I'd actually made 2 podcast playlists. I'd been alternating which one I'd uploaded it to, like a bit of a donkey. So I sorted all that out. It took blooming ages, and deleted that old playlist. So now we have the proper structure out, but there's only 18 episodes in there, so we are missing 2. But oh well. I'm sure they'll recover themselves somewhere. We're going to call them special episodes, the episodes that may or may not have ever existed. Who knows? But yeah, welcome back to the episode of the podcast. We are actually almost towards the end, I think, of lockdown. I don't quite know. I don't really know what's going on. It's a bit confusing. Boris Johnson isn't doing the best in explaining what's happening, or where people can go and whatnot. So I don't really know whether we're at a lockdown truly yet or not, but what I do know is that filming is a little bit tough still, and it probably will be tough for quite a while. Obviously we managed to get out and film for the past 2 weeks for the new documentary series, and that was really good. But as we start to look towards what we really want to do as a company and what we want to produce as a company, and that being obviously action films, the genres that rotate around and quite heavy on action, adventure, sci-fi, that kind of jazz. A lot of that breaks the 2-meter social distance rule when we have to film. So certain scenes require, actors and actresses to be closer to each other than normal, and it's kind of tough. Alex, what do you reckon? Do you reckon that you would be able to even consider filming at this point now?
Yeah, I mean, you like you said, there's you're starting to see companies go out and resume filming. I've seen like a number of people on YouTube who are production companies start to at least try to get life back to normal a bit, and I think that's important because we have to move on and we have to keep on producing content. We can't just keep on being stuck where we are.
Yeah, that's right, and it's kind of the same thing for a lot of different jobs as well. It's just because our job is really no different to any other. So like, someone who works in an office building would say, well, we've got to go back to work soon because we can't just sit at home and do nothing all day, because that's not how money comes in, and that's not how we make and develop and move on. I mean, the way in which we've produced content over the past couple of months has vastly changed from what we were doing last year, for example. And obviously, I think that the way in which we produce content now is quite good. That works. So I don't think we'll change that much what we're doing. Obviously, the likes of the Worthit podcast, I'd love that to become something where we can sit in a studio together and face to face and sit there, and I don't think that'll change very much as such, because the way in which we've developed and kind of coped with the idea of being on lockdown, having to film from home, obviously I'd love to get back together and film the stuff in the studio. I'd love to get everyone down and go back to filming and making stuff, because that's what I really like the most. I love being on set and I love producing stuff and making stuff. So the likes of when we film Exploration Nation, or when we film the likes of Get Growing, which is just released, that's kind of perfect. It's like a perfect happy medium for us at the moment, especially as we start to scope out what's going to come in the future. So yeah, filming that documentary stuff where we can go outdoors and stay distant and not have to have much contact with anybody else, that's kind of the perfect way forward for now, sort of to begin paving the way into the next step. And then hopefully, as it comes towards the end of this year, maybe even earlier than that, maybe some like autumn time, then hopefully we can go back to filming properly like we have been. So yeah, it's a strange situation, isn't it? It's very strange. I definitely didn't expect it. Don't think anyone expected it, to be honest. But But yeah, here we are. We've got to cope and we've got to just deal with it, get on with it. Yes, it was a setback, but at the same time, there's always ways and means out of an issue, and that's it's the difference between somebody who knows the way in which to go and somebody who just gives up, I guess. There's no point in giving up ever. So yeah, that's the first section, a little introduction, a little hello, and welcome back to the podcast. We don't have Ella with us this week. Unfortunately, there is some internet issues and connectivity issues going on, which will be sorted out for next week. We've got quite an exciting podcast episode next week. It's a special episode. We're going to be talking about charity podcast. It's like a charity podcast in general, talking about Zine, which is a project that Ella and her friend and colleague Sarah have created and set up. It's a really interesting project, and I really would love for you all to hear about it and hear a bit more about what they do and what they've been doing, and hopefully a little bit more about what kind of stuff that they've created. And talking about that, I actually ended up being chosen for this particular project, and I actually took some stuff from I think it was last summer, and I was looking back through all my old footage and all my old files, and I can't believe that it's been 1 year since we did On Call. That's crazy to think of, that time when we did that daft little comedy we shot in 4 days and submitted it. It was kind of like the start, the first film that we actually properly made as a company, and one of the first proper independent short films that we did. It's crazy. How many, I was counting as well, how many short films do you reckon that Worthit has done since then?
Ooh. Well, obviously we did Interview and Ghostly X,
Mm-hmm.
and then we've done the first 5 episodes of the original run for Exploration Nation.
That's right. Yeah.
We've done the special, and then obviously we got the next however many episodes we're doing of Get Growing. So it's about like 5 or 6 different projects. Yeah,
absolutely, and it's in the 20s. The short film count is in the 20s, which is crazy. It's a lot, to be fair. And obviously, I love making short films, but obviously, wanted to progress and wanted to get them to a state at which they're longer and bigger and better and budgeted and funded and through until we hit feature film. We need to, I guess, ramp up our game and move on. That's something that we really want to consider when we come out of the post-pandemic stuff. And when we're allowed to break this 2-meter social distancing rule, and when we're allowed to go back to normal filming, I really want to try out some bigger projects, and we've got some in the pipeline, some stuff being planned, which is it's really interesting. Do you still have like a dream project that you want to work on at all over the next few years?
I don't know. I'd love to do something that was like a fight heavy, like very quick pace, like fight heavy scene. I don't know, something that incorporated that, be really cool. Yeah,
absolutely. It'd be great. And I watch loads of stuff that's fight heavy and action heavy and all that kind of stuff, and it's so interesting to watch. I'd love to be able to make it as well. So yeah, I cannot wait. So part 1. Now, normally for the past, I say 3 episodes, maybe even 4 episodes for that matter, we've been talking about the 30-day film challenge, but it's actually come to an end. So the 30 days are up, and we talked about the last couple of days in last week's podcast, and it leaves a bit of a gap. We don't have any film challenges to talk about or anything like that. I'm a bit upset, to be honest, but as soon as we do have another challenge, we'll obviously be ready and able to talk about it again. Are there any other challenges, Alex, that you've entered over the past, I'd say, year? At all? Have you entered into any competitions or challenges, or maybe it was something to do with maybe like a YouTuber said, oh man, I'm going to put up this challenge that people need to submit to using this hashtag. Have you done anything like that?
Nothing like that revolved around social media. Like I've done stuff like where it was like, oh, see if you can like recut a video or something like that. But nothing that revolved quite like the 30-day film challenge, I would say.
Yeah, because it was actually a really long-winded one. Normally, a lot of the time when we do it's something that one-off thing. It's a one-off project or a one-off video. Like, for example, the My Road Reel Film Challenge was a 3-minute long video, and that was just there. It was made, it was done, and that was it. We moved on. It was just one particular post for that whole month. Whereas this challenge has actually taken us the entire month to make and to think about, and it's been really interesting. And it's actually given us quite a lot of content, a lot of topic areas to talk about, and it's sparked some nice creative ideas. I found that a lot of the time when we were doing the 30-day challenge, I would have to read more about film and more about what to make an educated choice, because I didn't want to make a choice where I'd think, oh, I could have chosen this, or somebody's going to hate this, or I could have chosen something way better than that. I didn't want to be very self-centered and blinkered in my choices, so I decided to try and, I guess, open out a bit more and choose more of a variety as such. I still chose everything around 2014. Apparently 2014 was like the best year for film for me, because that's all of the years that was in there. Literally every single film I'm sure was made in 2014. So I don't know, 2014 must have been a year for me when I actually, got my arse in gear and watched films, but who knows. So yeah, I tried to look around and make sure my choice was right, I guess, in a way, because sometimes I'm not a very heavy film watcher, and I never was really, especially growing up, because I played a lot of video games. So therefore, the amount of video games usually took over the amount of time that I had to watch TV and film. So I never really had that kind of film education when going into do media. So I was very, I guess, production heavy when I went through the course. So I focused a lot on the actual camera aspects and the shots, and I never knew what to reference them to. I never knew where they came from or what influence had. So it's been quite nice to learn a little bit more. Did you get the chance to watch many films when you were younger?
Yeah, I watched a couple films. But I think I was in like a similar boat to you, where it was like I wanted to know how something worked rather than like try and recreate something or re-envision something. It was that kind of thing.
Absolutely, and I think it's down to the course choice that we made, because obviously we did the same course at university, and that being media production, and it's very heavily based around the practical elements of creating film or photography or editing or whatever. It allowed you to specialize and choose, and I really like that idea, the ability to be you and find your footing, I guess, in the media world, and decide what you wanted to do, and then they would then allow you to explore that a bit more, or give you the freedom to explore that a bit more. Whereas if I was to choose something like film studies or creative writing, I feel like it was very centered around a set area that requires a lot more theory behind it, and knowledge that I didn't really know at the time. So I'm glad that media production gave me that ability to, I guess, reach around and look for what works and what doesn't work, because I found that the more stuff that I tried, then the more likely I would find that I liked it or I hated it. So, for example, I'll give you a good one. Editing is a really good example. Like, I really liked it at the very start, but as time went on, I found that I just hated it more and more and more. And it's not the nature of editing that I hated. It's just more the fact of I just didn't want to. I couldn't bring myself to cut again. It's like, oh, come on, I don't want to edit this. It's so boring. But yeah, I can imagine you're the complete opposite.
Yeah. I mean, like, I started when like I wanted to go into editing, and then since as I've been doing it more and more, it's like I've learned more things. I'm starting to enjoy it a bit more. But I think like the similar thing for me, or the complete opposite thing, was from me to you, was like shooting. Like I went into uni like I didn't want to really touch a camera. I was more focused, obviously, like more focused on the editing. But as I've started to like use more cameras and get a bit more experience with like all the different gear and stuff, it's something that I like really enjoy now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe it's something like it's a bit daunting to look at. Maybe you think, oh my god, do I have to learn all about this strange machine right in front of me? I don't know what to do. But sometimes you enjoy it, and the more you enjoy it, the easier it is to learn, and the more likely you are to go out and learn more bits about it that you maybe didn't necessarily know before. So I found that, so I hadn't touched the camera at all prior to uni. I didn't really know what a DSLR was. Didn't know anything about cameras whatsoever. So I actually borrowed my cousin's camera. She'd got a camera for her birthday, like one of the basic Canon. I think it was a 1000D, the Canon 1000D. So it was the very starter Canon DSLR. It was actually the world's smallest DSLR apparently at the time. So I got that, and I started practicing with it, messing around with different kind of shots and learning ISO, shutter speed, all that jazz, in order to try and catch myself up, because I felt like I was miles behind everyone at uni. I felt like they knew so much more than me, especially around cameras and stuff. But I knew that I had advanced knowledge in editing because I've been editing for ages. I've been messing around, taking clips off YouTube, re-editing them into something that's stupid. So yeah, I've been editing for a really long time prior to that, and that actually really helps us what's the word? I can't even think of the word. It's a really nice transmission. That was it. That's what I was going to say. really nice transmission into our next part of the podcast today, and that's talking about editing in general, because I want to go back to the topic, because editing is a really broad area, and we can cover loads of different bits and pieces in editing, but I want to today talk about specific programs within editing, within the editing world, because there's loads of different programs that you can use for different aspects and different ways and means. So, off the top of your head, you can probably think of, I'd say, at least 20 different editing programs that are used for various applications, from photo to animation to video to music to everything under the sun. Oh my gosh. And they're all, I guess, umbrella programs underneath bigger corporations, the likes of Avid and the Final Cut guys, obviously DaVinci Resolve, and the Adobe package. So do you have a particular preference? I think we discussed this when we first met you on one of those podcasts ages ago.
Yeah. I think mine's like Premiere. I like working in the whole like Adobe suite, sort of thing. So yeah, definitely. And I take it's because of the cross compatibility between all the different programs that you like it that much. Yeah. I mean, it's so simple. If I want to send something to After Effects or Audition, I can just one click with a button. It's all done, and then I can get like live updates if I make a change in After Effects, for example. It automatically goes into Premiere, which is really handy to have. Yeah,
that is really useful, to be fair. So obviously, did you ever use Sony Vegas at all?
Yes, yeah, that's what I started out on.
Cool, yeah. So I started out on the same thing too, cracked version or a really dodgy version of Sony Vegas Pro, and I used that on a really bad laptop. It was really slow and rubbish, and I think I only ever exported stuff in between 360 and 720p. Never had any HD footage at all because it was always downloaded from somewhere really dodgy. But I had a million different viruses on my laptop at the time. So yeah, I started out in Sony Vegas and then moved into Premiere Pro, and then from when we went to university, I used Premiere Pro, then switched over to Avid for a couple of years, used Avid religiously, and then went back again to what I use now, which is Premiere Pro. I've tried using DaVinci Resolve, but I can't seem to get it to run properly on my laptop. And maybe that's just because I'm not very good at hardware stuff for PCs and laptops, so maybe that's something that I'm just lacking in knowledge on. But for some reason, DaVinci Resolve just doesn't run for me at all. What do you think of DaVinci?
I like it. I mean, I've not tried much in terms of actual editing on DaVinci, but I've tried to use the color grading features a bit since I've downloaded it, and the color grading features are mad. Like, the amount of stuff that you can do through that program is unbelievable.
Absolutely. And of course, with having a Blackmagic camera too, being able to plug it straight into the software and have it, utilize the exact lens and the exact shot type and all of the color science behind it is all particularly focused for the Blackmagic cameras itself. So it must be really, really, really useful to use. So especially whenever you're grading with like raw files, I can imagine, obviously, aside from the file size being monstrously big and the pain in the backside to sometimes work with, the end product and the result that you get out of it must be absolutely brilliant. So
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, have you used much of Final Cut?
I've done, I think, two videos in Final Cut. So not like a massive amount of experience, but I've used it a couple times. Yeah.
I feel like all editing software kind of runs the same. You have your clips, you put them into a timeline, you edit the timeline, and you export the video. It's kind of, that's the bread and butter of video editing, I guess. And most software has to adhere to that format in order for it to work properly. But I've never really kind of got the idea of Final Cut Pro. It seems like a drag and drop software, and it seems too quick and too easy. There must be loads and loads of background processes that go into how it works and trying to make it more fluid. Obviously, it's a Mac-only program too, so it's something that I haven't actually personally used that much before. I've never had a copy of it. I only ever used it in university. And even then, that was only to mess around with footage and stuff, so I never really cared that much for it. So I always reverted back to Premiere Pro and back to Avid, and of course DaVinci Resolve whenever it actually decides to work for me. So I never really got the chance to properly use Final Cut Pro, but I've heard some really, really good things about it. There's like loads of different, loads of different corporate companies that use Final Cut Pro, especially to edit their clips if they want stuff done quickly. And I think that's the whole notion around the use and the heavy use anyway for Final Cut Pro. It's kind of the same as, what's the other program called that's similar? It's like the free version that goes onto MacBooks. I'm trying to think of the name of
iMovie.
it. iMovie, that's it. Yes, iMovie, which is kind of a similar like look and feel. So if you couldn't like afford spending 250 quid to get Final Cut Pro, then you just look towards iMovie. It's kind of the same structure and layout, just with loads less features. So yeah, obviously whenever I was looking around for editing jobs and editing work, a lot of the companies are saying must have experience with Final Cut Pro. And I was saying, I don't have experience with Final Cut Pro, but I'm really experienced with Premiere Pro, and it's kind of a bit of a catch for me always whenever I try and look for any editing jobs in general at all. Have you found that it's the same for yourself, or?
Yeah, I mean, if you stuff like freelance jobs where like you're creating the job, it's okay, I guess. But like I say, if you're working for someone, you want to try and be in a position where you know like what they're going to throw at you, and if that's Final Cut, you know how to use it. But like you were saying,
Absolutely.
I think a lot of the concepts for all video editing software are very similar. Final Cut's just in the fortunate position where it's made by Apple, who also make the computers, and it's like a vertical integration where you can render something extremely quick on Final Cut. And that was the same, I think, one of the new iPad Pros as well. There's an app called I think it's Luma Fusion or something like that.
Okay.
And because the iPad Pros are so quick, they just render out really, really fast, and to do like stuff on that, it's mad what's going on right now.
That'd be crazy. You imagine plugging in your wireless Magic Mouse and then having the keyboard attachment to an iPad Pro and editing a full 4K video and then being able to export it so fast and upload it so fast. It just makes content so much easier.
Yeah,
I think that's always been one of the biggest hiccups within filmmaking, and that's the sheer length of time that it takes to create a video in post-production. So it's the reason why so many projects are delayed or stalled, or their deadlines are usually extended, is due to the fact that it just takes so long to get all the footage together and to have it rendered and to have it played back and to get all the reviews and stuff for it. So originally when we did Get Growing, for example, we intended that to be released last week. So that would be the start of June, be perfect. But with the amount of times you have to render something, upload it, get notes, download it, re-render it, and then upload it again and get more notes, and so on and so forth. It's such a pain in the backside process. It takes ages. But with the likes of this fast rendering and the idea of having something that boots and renders really fast, it just takes out such a big chunk of time that would be wasted, and just sitting there watching the percentage go up and up and up and then fail at the last minute. So speaking of stuff failing and timelines crashing and stuff not responding, let's go back to Adobe and talk about Premiere Pro, because Premiere Pro is very hit and miss. I've found, especially on Windows. So when I started at the university, I had a MacBook Pro and I used Premiere Pro on that, and it never crashed. I literally it never ever froze, crashed, nothing. It ran perfectly. And then I converted to a gaming laptop, which obviously had way better specs than the MacBook Pro at the time. And every time I work on a project, at least once it'll crash and I'll lose some footage, or I'll lose a particular progress point on the project because I'll always forget to save or whatever. What is the reliability like for you on your Premiere Pro?
It's kind of the same story. Like it's hit and miss. I think one of the reasons for that is that like in a big technical way, like it's Adobe optimizes a lot of their stuff for like Intel processors, and obviously Macs are exclusively using Intel processors at the minute. So, but they have something called QuickSync, and that allows for like much higher speeds for like render times, and so forth. But it's a lot more. It's definitely a lot more reliable when you use like Intel processors with Adobe. It seems. Obviously, it's not the case across the board because it, like you're saying, it can depend on your computer as well. But it definitely seems that way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's strange having to rely on software and hardware to to work in unison, I guess, because if they don't work in unison, it can all go wrong, and it's a bit of a pain in the backside to get around it or fix it or whatever. And there's obviously ways and means in which you can get around speeds at which it plays back and speeds at which you render by, directed RAM usage and all that jazz. But, I don't want to have to mess around with something. I'm a little bit, I guess, selfish and lazy when it comes to software in a way, because I sort of expect when you switch it on, I expect it to work straight away rather than having to fiddle about with all my computer settings just to make it work. I feel like you shouldn't have to do that. I feel like you shouldn't have to rely so heavily on fixing your computer for the program to work. It should be the other way around. It should be the program fixing itself to work on all computers. But maybe that's just an incorrect opinion. I don't know. I'm not too sure. I'm no expert anyway. Trying to run away from editing as fast as I can every time I see it. When we talk Premiere Pro, when you very first open a project, I want to know what your windows look like, because obviously every single editing software is based around Windows forms, and people have different customization and different window formats and shapes and sizes and all that jazz. They put their bins over on the left screen, or they put the bins on the right screen and have playback on the right or up above them or whatever. And there's loads of different ways and means you can do it. So I'll tell you exactly what I have on my settings. So when I'm comfortably editing any program at all, I have all of my bin structure and all my individual bins in different windows on my left monitor. So my left monitor is solely for bins and nothing else. On my right monitor, I will have the timeline full on the bottom half of the screen, and above I'll have source on the top left, and I'll have my actual main project timeline window as a playback video on the right side. And every time I need to have effects or edit effects or anything like that, that'll be on the left monitor with all my bins and stuff like that. So that'll be out the way, so it doesn't get in the way of me looking at my timeline and playing back stuff. And regardless of that, anyway, all of my my cut, my razor key, my select key, anything like that is all customed onto my mouse and my side buttons and stuff like that. So I don't really have to move that much if I'm editing in timeline, which I do quite a lot anyway. I'm quite a lazy editor. I like to edit in the timeline. So a lot of the time, all of my stuff and all of my access is right in front of me on my mouse, so I don't have to mess around trying to find panels and stuff to reopen it. So is yours different to mine?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I think we both edit on two monitors, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have my left monitor is exclusively for my timeline video. So I get like a full screen preview of what I'm editing.
Nice.
And then on my right side, I have the full timeline, and then to the left of that I have all my bins, and then above that I have my effect controls, and to the right of that I have my source monitor. And then I just have a strip down the side for all my color correction or color grading and my effects panel, so that I can just easily drag and drop those onto the project. Yeah.
So I've done some work at a post-production house, and a lot of the time you have to sit at different stations and different edit rooms per day, or per week for that matter. So every time you go to a new edit station, the difference between all of the layouts and everyone's stuff is crazy. For example, another big one, do you edit on Wacom tablet or do you edit on mouse?
I edit on mouse.
See, I often edit on Wacom. So it's, again, another completely different one. Even though I just mentioned buttons on my mouse, a lot of the time I don't use mouse to Wacom, and on the pen I'll have different buttons that will allow me to do different things. So I learned how to use Wacom because of LA Productions, when I worked there for them, because they all religiously use Wacom. So I thought, right, may as well get used to it now whilst I've got it. I got used to it then, so now I can't really go back. I feel like the editor is much faster on Wacom because I feel like it'd be much more accurate. Because obviously in the square of the Wacom tablet is where your screen is, for that matter. So I feel like I can put and press and whatever really, really quick on Wacom, and mouse is a little bit more inaccurate for me. So I use Wacom for most of my editing stuff now. And yeah, as you say, your layout is completely different to mine in its entirety. If I had the ability to have 3 monitors, that would be brilliant, because then I would put full playback on one of the monitors and then have the the next monitor on for timeline, and the next monitor for bins and storage and stuff like that. I think that would work probably the best. But yeah, it's about what I like the most about setting up my space, my workspace anyway, is I love the ability to have, I guess, space. Just in general, just space. If I can like clearly see all of my stuff in front of me, I'm happy. I don't really like cluttered stuff. I don't like throwing stuff everywhere. I found the hard way, or I found out the hard way anyway, that messing around with footage and putting it in dodgy bins and renaming them to silly names and stuff and not keeping track of stuff is the worst thing. Because as a project gets bigger and bigger, it gets so complex and confusing. Do you have specific naming conventions for your bins and stuff, or?
Yeah, so I usually separate when I'm editing. I'll separate. Like for Get Growing, we filmed on 2 different cameras, so
yes.
I will usually separate the footage and I will name each folder as what that camera was.
Right.
And then inside that, I like for Get Growing, I did episode 1, 2, 3, and then after that I did -A or -B if it was like the A cam or the B cam. So that allows me to easily just, if I go down the list, I can see, okay, well that's episode 1A, and that was shot like on the Canon camera, so we'll go in there and drag it onto the timeline, you know.
Fair enough. Yeah. That's pretty damn organized. And I often use just numbers to organize my footage anyway. So like you say, A B cam splits itself. I have so I'd say if I started off, it'd be 001 would be assets, 002 would be video, 003 audio, 004 intros, outros, all that shizzle. And then if you go into each folder, it'll then be broken down into its individual camera point where it's come from. Every time I plug in a new SD card, that'll have its own specific name and place now. Because a lot of the time what I do is I just go folder 1 and then another folder inside that and have a different set of footage, and another folder inside that have a different set of footage. It was so confusing, so convoluted. So yeah, organization is key if I ever learned anything. So yeah, and that actually brings us quite nicely to the end of today's podcast. So I really do hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, make sure you drop a like on the video. If you do want to come over and see our ugly faces, then YouTube does show that off quite nicely in HD as well. Oh my gosh, how scary. But yeah, if you are listening over on Google Play, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever that may be, then make sure you come over and check out all of our other social media channels too. That'll be very much appreciated. Of course, if you're watching over on YouTube, then you want to do the opposite and you want to listen on the go, then Spotify and all that jazz is available. I'll put the link down in the description below, of course. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for way more content than just the podcast. We've got behind the scenes stuff. We've also got over on our Facebook community page our brand new show, Get Growing, which we'll be talking all about in 2 weeks' time. We'll have Steve Prudence on the show to have a little chat about his project and all the work he's been putting into it. He's been doing an amazing job, and his project looks absolutely brilliant. So I can't wait to show you the rest of the season and talk to him about how he made the show, a little bit about his background and what he did. Don't forget to stay tuned for next week's episode, of course. Be talking to Ella and Sarah Garvey. And yeah, other than that, that's it. Thank you very much, Alex, for popping along again today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
That's quite all right. And I will speak to you all in next week's episode. Bye.
Bye.